Heading in the fight week, UFC Saudi Arabia was a disaster. We had a brand new main event. We had 3 other fights that needed new opponents at the last possible minute, and there was a lot of stuff up in the air. Well, here we are, 10 minutes after Robert Whittaker just knocked out Ikram Aliskerov, and I'm going to break down the entire card. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to recap the entire UFC Saudi Arabia fight card. But before we talk about the fights, let's talk about the absolute domination that was me and Jakey Boy. I hit every single bet that I put on the board. 100% of the bets that I put out there in the world came back with big, fat W's. 66% ROI. The safety parlay hit for the 4th event in a row, and it was a wildly successful night. Jakey Boy went 10-1 on picks. He was heading into the main event with a perfect fight card. He jinxed it because he started talking about it. You just got to keep those no-hitters to yourself. But he went into that main event 10-0 on picks. Obviously, Ikram Aliskerov ended up losing, but Jacob had an unbelievable night. His underdog lock of the week hit as well. If we look at my bets a little closer, here's all the bets I put on the board. Was it an astronomical amount of bets? No, of course not. But slow and steady wins the race. Consistency is what gets it done. I hit every single bet this week. I hit all but one last week, and the one I missed was just a little baby boy. We hit the Magomed Gadzhiyasulov, and that was a parlay with Shara's original opponent, so that dropped down to a money line just for Magomed. Then I re-parlayed Shara with Kelvin. We'll talk about every single one of these fights in detail. The 1.5 over for the co-main event, I only put $25 on it. I should have loaded up on that. I felt very confident in that. But I got a little nervous. Pavlovic has me a little wonky. The comments section has me terrified because everybody's talking about Pavlovic's going to knock him out. Free money, all that nonsense. So I only threw $25 on it. But that hit. And then the safety parlay. -120 safety parlay. Rinat, Fakhretdinov, and Nasrat, Haqparast. And boy, was I sweating those. Closer look at that safety parlay. I have hit 4 in a row. If we look at pay-per-views, which is what we're going into next week at UFC 303, I'm 11-2 in the last 9 pay-per-views. A 70% event win rate, a 25% lifetime ROI. Safety parlay is a premium member-only bet, and if you want to be a premium member, don't be a cheap bastard. It's $10 an entire month. $10 for an entire month, not per event, $10 for an entire month. You're going to get the safety parlay, the picks, the bets, the tools, the artificial intelligence, and every single thing that we offer. Just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. You'll unlock everything. That will include UFC 303, the Macy Barber card, and an entire month worth of events. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top. Let's talk about the fights. Right off the rip, it was an interesting fight night. We have Long Xiao. He took on Chang Ho Lee. Chang Ho Lee's like, I'm the Korean Khabib. You guys can call me the Korean Khabib. And what would that imply? As I sit here today, my lips to God's ears and your ears, what would that imply? If I said, hey, I'm the Italian Khabib, that would imply that I'm going to wrestle my little ass off. Is that what Chang Ho Lee did? Not in the fight that I saw. In the fight that I saw, Long Xiao was the wrestler. Long Xiao was the one shooting the takedowns. And what did my breakdown say? I said Long Xiao is a wrestler. And then I said Chang Ho Lee prefers to strike. And then the comments were like, hey man, I genuinely think, and they were being helpful, I genuinely think you have this backwards because Chang Ho Lee is the wrestler. So then I was like, oh my God, am I a racist that I confused these two gentlemen? So I went back and I rewatched all the tape. And no, I'm not. I'm also not an idiot. You type in a name and the videos come up. You see it's the same name. You look at the person and you're good to go. The tape told me that Chang Ho Lee was not a nonstop wrestler. And so did the fight. Did he look like a wrestler? He was credited with a few takedowns. Show me where he shot actual takedowns. They were like body clinches and hanging out up top and then working on trips and things like that. He wasn't shooting takedowns. So the whole idea of the Korean Khabib, that is nonsense. Erase it from your memory. Strike it from the record. That I don't ever want to hear that crap again. That is an absurd thing to put out in the universe when you're not even going to shoot real takedowns. Now let's talk about the actual fight. It was an entertaining fight. It was a good back and forth fight. And if this fight was in Vegas, I'm curious how it would have been scored. They scored it similar to Vegas where the wrestling almost didn't matter. Long Xiao was the more successful wrestler. But Chang Ho Lee was bombing. He was throwing knees up the middle. He was striking a little bit. The damage seemed to be the difference. Long Xiao had a cut. He was bleeding. That seemed to be the difference. Haters are going to say, and first of all, I picked Long Xiao to win, so I was wrong. Jacob's underdog lock of the week was Chang Ho Lee. So haters who don't want Jacob to succeed in life are going to say, well, that cut was caused by a headbutt, which it was. I also don't think that Chang Ho Lee, if I was scoring that fight, that would have been very, very, very close. It was a razor-thin decision, an entertaining fight nonetheless. My biggest takeaway was this whole Korean Khabib, that is absolute nonsense that should never be spoken into the universe again. Like, I have never seen a more... How little self-awareness do you have to call yourself the Korean Khabib, talk about it all week long, that's who I'm going to be, and then go out there and basically shoot 0 actual takedowns other than some up-top body clinches? That was a little weird. The other thing that was weird was this matchup. We had Magomed Gadzhiyasulov taking on Brendson Ribeiro. This was supposed to be a striker's delight. Magomed is supposed to be this big, powerful striker. There's supposed to be this guy that can put your head out whenever he wants to. He can shoot some takedowns if he needs to, but he's a striker. Brendson Ribeiro is supposed to be a chinny guy. He's going to come forward. He's going to strike with you as well, but he's supposed to be chinny. But what we actually got was Brendson Ribeiro clinging on for dear life and trying to turn this into a wrestling match. And you know what? Strategy-wise, that makes sense. In the world of the UFC, where you get paid half of your money to show up, and then the other half, if you win, I understand the win at all cost mentality. And in this case, all cost to Brendson Ribeiro was, I need to wrestle. I am not going to strike with this guy. I was just knocked out. And this guy is going to knock me out if I strike with him, so I need to wrestle. So I understand that. The problem is, we got a pretty uneventful fight. We got a boring fight where the commentators were clinging on to the idea that, wow, Magomed is phenomenal because he's adjusting here and he won some of these grappling exchanges. And he won when they got on the ground. He was on top and he looked good. And that is all true. And you can't even fault Magomed for this fight because he obviously wanted to strike. It was Brendson Ribeiro that was grapple at all costs. So it was kind of a weird fight where we were all looking forward to a big knockout. We were all looking forward to something exciting. And we basically got some cage hugging, the occasional takedown, and some control time on the ground. Magomed won the fight, got his first win in the UFC, got that out of the way, and maybe next time he'll get somebody that will stand there and strike with him. Here's my issue with Brendson Ribeiro. You know, the UFC is a weird world because it is entertainment. And I know all sports in theory are entertainment. If nobody watches the NFL, right? If you're not entertained by it and you don't watch it, they don't make any money and they can't sell the TV rights and blah, blah, blah. But in that world, your team just needs to win. They don't care if they're exciting wins, if they're ugly wins, if they're overtime wins, if they're blowout, nothing matters. If your team wins and continues to win, and you win the Super Bowl, and you win the playoffs, and you win your division, then that team does really well, makes more money, sells more tickets, does all those things. In the UFC, winning is not enough. You need to be exciting. So then when you get somebody like Brendson Ribeiro, who is not winning and also not exciting, you got to cut him. He's got to be gone. You have to cut him. He should not be on the UFC roster. He's not exciting and he's not winning. He's got to be gone. I understand they typically 3 losses. Is it? No, he's gone. If you're going to be boring, you have to win. And we've seen that before. We've seen the wet blanket wrestlers. Grant Dawson, maybe the most boring guy in the UFC right now. But he wins a lot, so he can keep his job. Brendson Ribeiro, boring and not winning. What are we doing? And that is the unfortunate reality of this sport. Either be exciting or win or both. But you can't be winless and boring. That can't be the thing. What was his name? Daniel Lacerda? Didn't that dude go like 0-5? But he was exciting. Every one of his fights was exciting. At a certain point, they got to get rid of you. You can't win. But they'll keep you around a little longer if you can. And certainly if you're exciting. Brendson Ribeiro's got to go. He took an exciting prospect. Could have been a fight. If he went out on his shield like a man like he did in his last fight, they'd probably give him a third fight. Like, all right, this guy goes out here, he bangs, let's give him a fight. Like, who cares? That's what he's here for. But he didn't. He's probably going to lose his job. The weirdest part about that fight, though, wasn't the grappling. It was the scorecards. If you didn't watch the fight, almost nothing happened. Literally, almost nothing happened. First round, Brendson had a little more success in the grappling. Second round, Magomed ended up on top. He had success in the grappling. Third round, Magomed ended up on top. He was up top much longer, much more clear. This one judge, Vito Palio, I don't know if that's how you say it, probably, and he sounds like one of my people, which is not a great look for us. A 10-8. A 10-8 in that round. I'll tell you what that was. People were like, oh, I'll tell you what that was. He looked around, realized where the hell he was, read the room, and was like, uh-oh, I'm about to make this a split decision, and it shouldn't be. So then he made it a 10-8 round so that at least his scorecard was a draw, and he wasn't the idiot on the wrong side of a split. He was better off being the idiot on the wrong side of a split than the guy who called a 10-8 round in a round where nothing happened. This is the problem with judging, because let's take a guess what the consequences will be here, or the review. I have a real job. It isn't just YouTube all day, every day. I have a real job. And in my real job, if I just failed miserably, if I went to a customer meeting and I blew it and it was really bad, there would be a discussion. Would I be fired? It depends how bad it was. But there would be a discussion like, hey, Ange, heard you blew it. What's going on? There's nobody on this planet that's going to sit down with Vito and be like, my man, what the hell was that? What did you see? What was it? That won't happen. So he'll just live another day and put out another bad scorecard at some point in time in the future. Either way, that was very bizarre, but I'm telling you, that's what it was. That's what it was. He realized he was going to be the one that was going to make this a split decision. So he moved the score a little bit to make it a draw instead on his card. So then you have a majority decision. Two say won, one said it was a draw. Magomed still wins. Not the most exciting fight, but I blame Brendson more than anybody. Then we had Muin Gafurov's first UFC win. This was an exciting fight. We finally got to the exciting fights. And early, it looked like Kang was going to get it done. His grappling looked spectacular. Kang looked the best he's ever looked in the grappling department. On the ground, he was moving, he was fast, he was slick, he was doing all the things, and he was doing them well. On the feet, Muin was having a little bit of success. He was marching forward, he was bombing, he was connecting. Where Muin had no success, and I'm updating my notes, is his wrestling is not as good as we thought. He's supposed to be this good wrestler. He's supposed to be this guy that can compete in the wrestling, but he's not good. The wrestling's not very good. It really is just not good. And that's what makes breaking down fights so tricky, is because when you get a UFC debut, as we did with Muin 2 fights ago or 3 fights ago, going into the John Castaneda fight, you do the tape study. That's all you can do, right? You do the tape study. You watch. You listen to the commentators. You pick the things up. And they talk about his wrestling. And you see his wrestling in those fights. And then he gets into a UFC cage and he can't wrestle well. He can't wrestle well. He's not that good of a wrestler. I have to update my notes right now. My notes say Muin Gafurov is a wrestler who will plant his feet and trade punch for punch. He's not a wrestler. I got to take that out of there. What he is, though, is a dog. This was a dog fight. This was a good fight. There was more than one exchange where he took over. He was getting out-grappled, but there was more than one exchange where he took over and he was landing punches, dead tired, on his knees, connecting big, finishing the rounds with an exclamation point. Muin Gafurov looked great. He earned that first UFC win. Congratulations to him. And, I picked him to win. I thought it would be a little wider than it was. I missed my prize picks line. I thought he would get at least 2 takedowns. He barely got 1. But good for Muin. It was a solid win, and he earned it. He went out there, and he fought, and he earned it. Then we had Rinat Fakhretdinov. Here's a picture of him smiling. I don't know what you're smiling at. First of all, thank you. He won. He was in the safety parlay. I have yet to lose a bet with Rinat Fakhretdinov in it. With that being said, he's not a man you can trust. He's just not a guy you can trust. I'm going to continue to bet on him in matchups where he's fighting somebody who's not dangerous and that he can take down. Because Rinat is an enigma. So he officially has the longest unbeaten streak in the UFC. Of all, I think it's like 550 fighters on the roster. Rinat Fakhretdinov, this bald-headed, no-mustached, bearded man, has the longest unbeaten streak. They have to say unbeaten instead of win because he has a draw in his last fight. His longest unbeaten streak in the UFC on the entire roster. And that includes undefeated fighters. But damn, man, that was close. That was a split decision. I literally left the room. I didn't want to hear the decision. But I heard it and I'm good with it. And frankly, I don't think it should have been a split. This one was actually pretty straightforward to me. This was a very clear 29-28 for Rinat. Very clear to me. It made sense. I wouldn't have given a round to Nicolas Dalby, but I understand if you did, right? The stupid breathing, but he moves forward. He's busy. Nicolas Dalby at 39 or whatever he is a dog. He's tough. He's not a guy you can get out of there. He's got cardio. His game plan early was spectacular. His game plan was, I'm not going to wait for Rinat to wrestle me. I'm going to wrestle him. Pushed him against the cage. Held him there. Removed any of the big power. Because Rinat does have power in his hands. Removed the big power. Held him against the cage. But then Rinat started to find some rhythm, had no problem bombing away, did drop Nicolas in the first round, dropped him. That saved his fight because that first round, another judge could have given Nicolas Dalby that first round because it was close. It was close because Nicolas was holding Rinat against the cage and making stuff happen. Did we get a little bit of a homer call? Like I said, I think it was a very clear 29-28 for Rinat, but I understand that it was close. All the people bet on Nicolas Dalby. You know, the bet didn't hit, but it's not the worst bet in the world. What I would recommend to you all, and I always recommend this when we place our bets, and I hit a few of these last weekend, anytime you get a fight like this where there's a good size favorite and a live underdog and you know it's going to go to a decision, do the plus 3.5. Buy the points on the scorecard. So instead of getting Dalby at plus 220, you probably would have gotten him at maybe plus 120. And yeah, it's not the same money, but one of those bets hit and one of them doesn't. Either way, Rinat won this fight. He is not a man that you can trust. He is not a guy that every single fight you can just blindly be like, oh, Rinat's going to win. Because if he fights somebody tough, if he fights somebody that's going to be there in the third round, swinging, ready to go, he could end up in some trouble. He almost gave this fight away just like he did the last one. And then we had an incredible UFC debut. Welcome to the UFC, Felipe Lima. Felipe Lima stepped up on like 4 days' notice. Felipe Lima fought at 125 pounds, 135 pounds, popped in here at 145 pounds and looked good. The most impressive thing, though, in this fight was when we got to the third round, and this submission is in the third round. When we got to the third round, felt like Felipe was going to lose a decision. Felt like he needed to finish in that third round to get it done. He was losing up until this exchange. Then he got a takedown, took the back, and choked him out. He choked out 6-fight win streak Muhammad Naimov in a short notice UFC debut up in weight. Early in the first round, he looked incredible. Super slick striker. Looked really, really good. Really good. Muhammad Naimov is chinny as shit. We've seen him chinny in the past. We've seen him get dropped and wobbled. But Felipe Lima was supposed to be a weight class below him, and Felipe Lima wobbled him. Felipe Lima had him in a little bit of a trouble. He did not look small in this fight, even though he fights at a lower weight class. He was losing, sucked it up, got the takedown, and got the submission. At the end of the second round, I was watching Jacob's live stream. At the end of the second round, you could see Felipe, he stood up, walked away, shaking his head, frustrated, pissed. And this was right after the Rinat fight. I showed you. Here's the graphic. I showed you. This is Rinat in a split decision, and this is Felipe. Rinat barely squeaking by, laughing like it's no big deal. Felipe, in between rounds, walking to his corner, pissed. I should have put him out. I should have dominated. Pissed at himself. That is the type of chutzpah. I was saying chutzpah on the Saudi Arabia card. It's probably not the way to go. But that's the type of chutzpah that you want to see. Somebody who's just in that fight, in a fist fight, wants to win that at all costs. He went to his corner, came back out, refreshed, shot a takedown, took the back in a scramble, and choked him out. Felipe Lima, I am very curious to see what his next weight class is. I don't know if he stays at 145. This is when fighters find out. This happened to Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis was a 170-pounder, popped into the UFC at short notice at 185. Couple of knockouts in a row, boom, now he's ranked at 185. That could be Felipe Lima. 135-pounder, pops in the UFC at short notice, 145, realizes, hey, not cutting weight's been pretty good to my body. And he stays there. I don't know what weight class he's going to go to, but I am looking forward to his next fight. Here's the other half of the safety parlay. And hell yeah, was this dicey. I also left the room for this decision. And I said the first half of the safety parlay, the Rinat Fakhretdinov fight, I felt good about it. I watched it and I was nervous. I'm always nervous. But I felt pretty good, 29-28. This one, I didn't know. Honestly, between us girls, I would have scored this for Jared Gordon. I would have scored it for Jared Gordon. But that's not what happened, and I'll take it all day. It is what it is. We've been screwed in the past, and we'll take the screwing. That's fine with me. I do think it was a bit of a homer call. Where I do think the difference is, though, and I saw plenty of people in the Discord that felt like Nasrat actually won outright. So I don't think this is like universally or unanimously a bad decision, and I wouldn't call it a bad decision. What I do think that Jared Gordon messed up is all of the takedown attempts. Because Nasrat defended pretty much every single one. So even though Jared had a ton of success moving forward, if you didn't watch the fight, early on the fight, Jared Gordon just started marching forward. High volume, would grab a leg, pick it up, push Nasrat against the cage, let go of the leg, and bomb. Constant forward pressure. Constantly grabbing a leg, looking for a takedown, and bombing. Nasrat early on was held against the cage, getting hit a little bit. Then Nasrat started to fight in his rhythm. Rocked Jared in the first round. At the end of the first round, he rocked him. That is what won Nasrat the first round. Then you go into the second round being like, here we go. Chinny Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon's been knocked out plenty of times. Chinny Jared Gordon. Here we go. But he didn't stop. Jared Gordon didn't stop. He continued to move forward. He continued to set a pace. He continued to work takedowns. He continued to throw out volume. But Nasrat defended almost every single takedown. And the one time he was taken down, just dude popped up instantly. Might not have even called it an actual takedown. Then Nasrat would have some moment of success where he would land. There was one point in the fight late in the second round where I was positive Nasrat was done. Positive. Jared Gordon was just bombing away on his head, and Nasrat was barely moving out of the way, barely doing anything. We still had like a minute left, and I was like, he's done. He's quitting on himself. But he reset, came back in the third, had some success. Jared was exhausted from the incredible pace that he set, and ultimately Nasrat sneaked out a super close decision. I would not call this a robbery. I personally would have scored it for the other side, but I picked Nasrat to win. He was in the freaking safety parlay. That cash, and it's all sunshine and rainbows. But if I'm signing my name to a scorecard, I might have given it to Jared Gordon literally for the forward pressure. Nasrat had the little cut. Jared Gordon was not bleeding as much, but certainly swollen and lumped up and all those things. So damage was about even. The pressure was on the Gordon side. It was clear Nasrat's the better, more technical striker, but it almost doesn't matter when you stay in somebody's face. I think the difference was A, local. You're just going to get a homer call every now and then. That is going to happen, and that should be factored in. And B, and when I say factored in, I'm not saying like give the fight to them. I'm saying should be factored in when you're analyzing a fight and you're going to put your money down. You should factor that in because the crowd is loud. That influences people. And what we see on the screen with laser pinpoint accurate strikes from Nasrat, that's not what they see. They just see bang, 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 bang on both sides. Either way, I think it was a little bit of a homer call, and the constant defending of takedowns, I think, was a better look for Nasrat than it was for Jared. You shoot a takedown, you don't get it, you look a little desperate. So Nasrat won that fight. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious what you think of that fight. If you think you would have scored it for Nasrat, it was the right decision, it was a very close split, or if you think Jared Gordon won that fight. Johnny Walker continues to be a chinny little baby. And yeah, it was a little bit aggressive, I guess, but what's frustrating with Johnny Walker, he's a tremendous human being. He's the largest light heavyweight on the roster, 6'6". He's the tallest light heavyweight, active light heavyweight on the roster. And when he is the guy that made him famous, the exciting guy, the jumping knee kick, what am I saying? The jumping spin kicks, the flying knees. When he's the guy doing the fun, creative stuff and having fun out there and being exciting and throwing stuff with power, that's when he wins. That's when he has his most success. A few years ago, he went to Conor McGregor's gym, SBG Ireland, and they tried to tame him. They tried to make him technical. And that's really where he hit his rough patch, because that's not who Johnny Walker is. He didn't find his success being clean and tame. And this isn't boxing. This is MMA. You can be a little more loose and wild in MMA. So he hit that skid. Then he was at 4 or 5 wins in a row. He got back to his fun, having fun out there, spinning, jumping, kneeing, doing all the things. But in this fight, he came out and was controlled. Johnny Walker was like technical and controlled. So Volkan Oezdemir lit him up. Absolutely lit him up. And that's because a tame, controlled Johnny Walker is trying to throw 1-2s, but they're not natural to him because that's not how he throws. So Volkan can read that. Oh, boom, here it comes. And he can read it. So Volkan read it, moved forward, landed whenever he can land, and Johnny Walker was chinny. This was a battle of the chins. Both of these guys are somewhat chinny. I know people got mad at me saying that Oezdemir is chinny, but he's a little chinny. He's been knocked out several times. He's a little chinny. Not as chinny as Johnny Walker, but he's a little chinny. I thought the height difference would matter. I thought Johnny would be jumping, spinning, throwing things in all wild directions, and he didn't do that. So Volkan just marched forward. Didn't do anything insane. Just marched forward, stayed in his face, and landed clean. Got it done. I don't know what if you're Johnny Walker, switch gyms. At this point, you're never going to be a champion. You're never going to be a champion. That's not who you're going to be. So at this point, what did we talk about earlier? You either have to be exciting or you have to win. Getting knocked out constantly isn't going to do it. So do not change your fight style. Be who you were to get here. And that's the exciting guy. The guy that throws wild kicks and spins and does fun stuff. Do that till the wheels come off. Make as much money as you can and go from there. You're not going to be a champion. Stop trying to be a technical striker. That's not who you are. Volkan Oezdemir, the problem is he good? Like, is Volkan Oezdemir good? His losses are good. He's lost to, I have the stats here. He's 7-6 in the UFC. Now he's 8-6 with this win. And his losses are to 2 champions and 3 challengers. 5 of his 6 losses are to actual UFC champions or people that were good enough at one point in time to fight for a belt. So I do think Volkan's good. And I'm interested to see what they do next for him, where he goes. He had some interesting call-outs. I'm curious to see where he goes next, who they give him next. Give him Dominic Reyes. Let's run that down. Give him Dominic Reyes. Let's see. Is Dominic's chin back or not? Let's find out. Give him Carlos Ulberg. He called out Jamal Hill. I think everybody wants to fight Jamal Hill. I think the word is out. Jamal Hill's a mental midget. He did that to himself, man. And it sucks because I like Jamal Hill. This is a little bit of a, not related to these fights. I liked Jamal Hill. I ultimately picked him to lose at UFC 300, but said, you know what? He's a good striker. He's technical. Look what he did to Glover, defend the blah, blah, blah. He loses the fight. He ran his mouth, lost the fight. Fine. That happens. Fine. But we've all seen the unraveling of Jamal Hill online. Fanning out money in a BMW like he's got generational wealth. Like he's one of these dudes sitting in the back. Look at all these men in the cage, behind the cage right now in those outfits. That's who Jamal Hill was fanning out every dollar he has in his bank account in a BMW, thinking that he had the same amount of money that those gentlemen back there have. Not a great look. Then people clowning him a little bit. You come here, fight me, I'll give you 20 grand. Dude, you're a perfect. Okay, not a great look. Then he went the opposite direction. Alex, when I beat Glover, I was very respectful. And when you beat me, you were very disrespectful. That's not cool. Dude, shut up. Now the fans are turning on you. The fans are, be cool, dude. Everybody loses. This is not a forgiving. Everybody loses. There are very few people that can go through their career without losing. Like an insanely few amount. Everybody loses. You got knocked out by the hardest puncher maybe the UFC has ever seen. It is what it is. Take the loss, move on, smile about it, be funny, be cool. Because going into that fight, you were funny and cool. Coming out of it, you were a loser crybaby. And now the fans are turning on you. Clip this part, send it to him. And also, Jamal Hill, heading into that fight, I'm sorry, this is because Volkan called him out. There are connections between my Jamal Hill rant and this fight. Going into UFC 300, Jamal Hill used the clip of my beautiful Ben Affleck-looking face on his Instagram story, picking against him in the Glover fight. First of all, I'm personal friends with Glover, okay? So yeah, I picked him to win. And he used that clip like, look at all milk takes. Fucking idiot. Then we had Shara Booten. Supposed to be that guy. Shara Magomedov taking on a short notice Antonio Tricoli, who flew from the other side of the world. You know Antonio Tricoli, I think, landed Thursday night, weighed in Friday? Like, this guy had almost no notice whatsoever to go to the other side of the earth for this fight. And Shara was supposed to knock his head clean off. Shara, the scary, one-eyed wrestler that's missing multiple teeth. The guy, the insane striker with nuts power. That's not who he is, though. That's not who he is. Well, if you do a montage of blurry footage of him knocking out people that look just like him in like black and white videos on regional scenes, yeah, he's the knockout guy. In the UFC so far, that's not who he is. And if you didn't watch this fight, you will see the result on Tapology and you'll be like, well, he knocked him out. What are you talking about? That is not what this fight was. This fight was ridiculously close. He could have potentially lost the decision if he didn't grab the cage to prevent the takedown in the second round. And all of a sudden, Shara is throwing one punch at a time. Frankly, one kick at a time. 80% of the strikes he threw, this is an eyeball test. I don't have a stat in front of me. It looked like 80% of the strikes that Shara threw were kicks. Kicks. Couple leg kicks, couple kicks to the stomach, kicks. Every now and then he'll stop moving, bang, throw a right. Every now and then stop moving, bang, throw a left. The only reason he finished Tricoli is because Tricoli is tremendous. He's like 6'5" or 6'4". He's a huge guy for this weight class. Flew to the other side of the world, cut all the weight, made the weight, and slowed down. This was fatigue and exhaustion. This was third round exhaustion. Because before this, Tricoli was just marching forward, sort of landing whatever he wanted to. It wasn't clean. He was clearly losing the striking exchanges, but he was landing when he did throw. Then he had a little bit of success in the grappling, was certainly able to hold Shara against the cage until he got a little bit of a homer call there to separate the two. When was the last time, and I could be way off, you will let me know in the comments, I know. When was the last time we actually saw people get separated or stood up? It's been a while. It's been a while. The referees have been letting people hold against the cage. It's been a while. But we're in Abu Dhabi, and you're holding Shara against the cage on ABC? On ABC? No, I don't think so. Separate him. So ultimately, Shara got the finish. Shara is exciting to watch. I will watch all of his fights. I'm fully bought into the hype, but there's caution here. There is caution here because if you've got a decent chin and you can move forward and you got a little bit of wrestling, you can beat Shara Magomedov. Shara Magomedov is not a combo throwing killer. He is not a killer. This picture is deceiving because this makes him look like a killer. He is not. He throws 1 or 2 strikes at a time and then completely disengages. He backs up a ton. I think we've all seen those highlight videos and the hype videos and this guy's going to Hollywood. He's so freaking scary looking. He's got one eye. But the reality is the actual execution, here's a kick, circle, kick, back up, punch, whoa, back up. I'm looking forward to his next fight, but I think they're sitting in a room tonight being like, hey, we got to be careful who we give him next because we know we have the potential for a star. My neighbor texted me, hey, when does this guy fight? And he sent a picture of him. He's like, I've seen the hype videos. I've seen all the stuff. When does he fight? So like he's the type of guy that will get the general public to care because he's crazy looking. And according to his highlights, he's an animal. According to his almost 30 minutes of octagon time, he's not an animal. He's a very good fighter, but he's not an animal. Then we had Fatty versus the Pothead. First of all, Daniel Rodriguez was out for a year because he failed a steroid test. So he had a USADA suspension. I don't know if they ultimately ruled it was a tainted supplement or what, but he was out, and it wasn't for weed. So he came back, supposed to fight at 170. Kelvin Gastelum supposed to fight at 170. Apparently, there was some sketchiness going on. I don't know if it was on the Kelvin side or the UFC side. Apparently, Kelvin Gastelum said, hey, I had a staph infection. I told the UFC like weeks ago or a week ago, something like that I wasn't going to make the weight. I don't know why they waited to tell Daniel Rodriguez till 2 days before. I don't know why they chose to do that, but I've known for a while I wasn't going to make this weight. So what is interesting is this wasn't a situation where Kelvin tried to cut the weight and couldn't. This is a situation where, at least according to him, a week or two out, he was like, hey, between the staph infection and a few other things, I'm just not going to be able to make 170. Can we make this work? And I think the UFC was either like, yeah, we'll make it work, or yeah, just keep working. We'll figure it out. And then they did figure it out, knowing full well that Daniel Rodriguez is already on the other side of the planet. If he says no, if Daniel Rodriguez says no, here's how the UFC contracts work. Daniel Rodriguez is there. He's scheduled to fight Kelvin Gastelum at 170 pounds. If he turns down the fight, they don't have to pay you. Remember Wonderboy? Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a gentleman that we all love, a gentleman who has done the right thing by the UFC for many, many years. His opponent missed weight. Michel Pereira missed weight. Wonderboy refused to take the fight, and they didn't pay him, and if they did, it took him like 3 months. It was a negotiation. And the UFC was like, listen, he didn't fight. I'm not going to pay this guy hundreds of thousands of dollars to not fight. And then his position is, why? It was not my fault I didn't fight. It's his. He didn't make the weight. I made the weight. And it ends up being a sloppy mess. So Daniel Rodriguez is in a tough spot. He's not a gentleman that I imagine is sitting on absolute piles of cash because even though he's done well in the UFC and made some good money, he's not a household name. He hasn't fought in a full year. So now he's in a position, hey, do I just accept the change here and take all of his money as well? Or do I say no and fly home without a fight, without money, and knowing the UFC is spiteful? So he just took the fight. And honestly, he looked pretty good. This was a good fight. This was a good back and forth fight. Frankly, you could have given this fight to Daniel Rodriguez. I wouldn't have, and I don't think he won. The wrestling late was certainly the difference. Kelvin Gastelum got the takedowns late. But if you look at the actual exchanges, Daniel Rodriguez had some very nice striking exchanges. He was landing clean. Had some very good striking exchanges. The problem is, Kelvin Gastelum has a Lego for a head. So you can hit him as hard as you want. And Daniel Rodriguez planted a few times and landed real nice. Nothing happened. Nothing. Kelvin doesn't even like do a hard blink to shake it off. Nothing happens. It's crazy. It is crazy. We all knew he had a cement head. We knew that. We knew he had a chin. He's impossible to get there. But like, I mean, Daniel Rodriguez hit him and nothing happened. Ultimately, Kelvin Gastelum looked pretty good. I mean, he didn't gas. He kept pushing forward. He kept bombing away. The Daniel Rodriguez side, the coaches were like, he's going to gas. He's going to slow down. It's like, have you seen a Kelvin fight? Like, if he's not wrestling, he doesn't really slow down. And then Daniel's takedown defense is just not really good enough. So even when Kelvin did wrestle, it wasn't hard. He literally lowered his level and then just do like a, I don't want to call it a blast double because he didn't really even have to move his feet. He would lower his level, grab behind the ass right above the back of your thighs, and then just sort of leap forward, and it was enough to get the takedown. So he didn't even have to use a ton of energy there. But either way, I am excited to get a little more clarity on this. I am curious how long the UFC knew, if they held this information back, or if Kelvin's team is just full of shit. And they're like, no, they didn't tell us a week ago. They told us when they got here. Like, I don't know. Maybe his manager messed up. Who knows what happened there? But Kelvin Gastelum, wildly unprofessional. Now, if he was having medical issues and he told them weeks ago, that's a very different story. But as of now, wildly unprofessional. He's missed weight a million times. He got kicked out of the welterweight division. That's why he's at 185 pounds, or was. He was kicked out. Dana White's like, you're done. You missed weight too many times. You're gone. You're done. Get out of here. And then here he is, back to the welterweight, missing. And here's my conspiracy theory. This might be just to plug his podcast. He's got a podcast or a YouTube show called Missing Weight with Kelvin Gastelum, where he just eats food. It's basically the Fight Foods vlog. He just eats food. And then he missed weight. That might have been the plan the whole time. Or he's just, it's a funny, if you are beyond your weight missing days, it's funny. It's a clever name, good for you. But not a great look on a week that you actually do miss weight. Co-main event of the evening. This was I had a plus 120 bet that this would go over 1.5. When I broke down this fight in my quick picks video, I picked Alexander Volkov to win. I said, this guy is 6'8". He's the better fighter. Sergey Pavlovich is all power and nothing else. He doesn't even kick. He's not even a kickboxer. He's a straight up boxer. And of course he hits insanely hard. But Alexander Volkov is not a guy that you're just going to knock out. He's been knocked out once. And it was Derek Lewis. And there was only 1 minute left. So it was at the end of a fight when Volkov already took he just sort of was like, coasting. And he got caught. So I was like, I just feel like Volkov can win this fight. And these odds seem way too far to me. And I got a few comments from some people. And we always get comments disagreeing with picks. And that's the beauty of this sport. You don't know until you see it. But the comments were like, one of them was like, hey, stupid. Didn't you see where Alexander Volkov said he used to train with Sergey and he said he's never won a round? Do some research. And just like real loser, basement dwelling, like definitely his mother does his laundry mentality. Like 100% without question. Guy's got no job, no hopes, no dreams, hasn't seen, so he goes like this when the sun comes up, like just real basement dweller mentality. But to answer the basement boy's question, yes, of course I saw that. Of course I saw that. But I don't believe what fighters say. Do you guys believe what fighters say? I'm in the best shape of my life. Never been better. I'm sharper than ever. And then as soon as they lose, my ACL was torn and you can't listen to these idiots. I don't mean to call them idiots, but you get my point. So yes, when Volkov is saying, I've never won a round against him, he hits insanely hard, that's just respect. He's just being a respectful guy. I didn't believe that for a half a second. I did not believe it for a half a second. And what did we see? We saw a 6'8" man use his 6'8" reach and length to keep a fight at bay. This was a pitter-patter party. It was just tap, tap, go, tap, tap, go, tap, tap, go. When he would watch Sergey load up, he would bring the shoulder down, turn the head, it would roll off, and he would come back. Tap, tap, go, tap, tap, go. Just jabbed his face to a million pieces and got it done. Alexander Volkov has been one of the best fighters on planet Earth for 10 years. To be a heavyweight and a ranked heavyweight for 10 years is incredible. It's not an easy feat. And yes, Sergey Pavlovich is knocking people's heads off left and right. But these one-rounder bust knockout guys, Alexander Volkov is not the guy that you're just going to one-rounder bust. He's not the guy you're going to win those fights against. So I had the over 1.5 here, and I had it for 2 reasons. One, I thought Volkov was going to win, and I didn't think Volkov was going to stop Sergey Pavlovich. And 2, even if Pavlovich was going to win, I did think there would be some respect here, and they wouldn't go balls out early. And that's basically what happened. There was a few times where Sergey sat down and threw something, but Volkov's big, he's long, they trained together, he knew what to do. Either way, not the most exciting fight. Honestly, the UFC's probably pissed they put this fight on. Because here they had a guy that was just running through people, knocking them all out. He just lost to Tom Aspinall. Fine, Tom Aspinall's a champ. Okay, no problem. And they have a guy that they could build back up. They have some excitement in the heavyweight division. And he just lost to a tried and true guy that will probably never be champion, who has already lost to the champ. This was bad matchmaking. If the UFC's trying to build the star, just let Volkov fight some other people and let him earn his way to the belt. But don't give Volkov, one of your most experienced heavyweights, who's not exciting, don't give him who could be the next knockout king. Don't give him that guy. Take the knockout king, give him somebody that he can knock out, build him back up, book a big fight, and see what happens. So, they're probably a little regretful of this matchup, but you reap what you sow, because they forced. Volkov didn't want this. They forced it on him. They literally you have to take this fight. You can't keep saying no. And look what they got. Now they have a guy that was on like a 5-6 fight first round knockout streak that is now on a 2-fight losing streak. Nobody cares about him anymore. Nobody. They have to be very careful with their next matchup because nobody cares about him anymore. Andrei Arlovsky fights at UFC 303. Just give him Andrei Arlovsky after, win or lose. That's what they're going to have to do. And then we had the main event of the evening. This is not the greatest photo of all time, but this is a photo of Ikram Aliskerov just slumped against the cage because Bobby Knuckles, who isn't always Bobby Power, was able to get it done. And this was just, I think there's multiple factors here. One, Bobby Knuckles is one of the best middleweights on the planet. The whole breakdown I just gave you of Volkov for heavyweight, same thing for middleweight for Bobby Knuckles, but better because he was the champion for a while. And he beat some of the best middleweights in the world for a while. I think he beat Israel Adesanya the last time they fought. I also thought Whittaker was fading a little bit. DDP ran through him. He had almost no success against Dricus du Plessis. And I was like, oh man, he's 35. He's got 8 kids? I get it. He's slowing down, all those things. But that's not really what we're seeing. Yeah, Paulo Costa landed that big time spinning back heel kick and it wobbled him a little bit, but he recovered. He got it done. I thought this was here we go, the next guy. But Ikram didn't even get a chance to get going. Ikram was blasted early. Look at the time, 3 minutes and 14 seconds. We're 2 minutes and 45 seconds into this fight. Not even. What the hell am I talking about? We're 1 minute and 45 seconds into this fight. And this is what happened. So he didn't even get a chance to get going. But Bobby got that clean, nice striking, landed and got it done. I do think weight cut was a factor here. This is the problem with short notice fights. Because Ikram is a big guy. He's not a small guy. He's a big guy. He was in Las Vegas a week ago. Cut weight. Was supposed to fight Antonio Triccoli. He cut all the weight. And then basically on Thursday, I believe, so obviously he didn't cut all the weight, but he was cutting the weight. They said, hey, do you want to fly to the other side of the world for a main event? Khabib called him and said, do it. You don't get these opportunities often. He took the opportunity, he went. But that messes with your body chemistry. That messes with your chin. If Ikram Aliskerov had a full camp, do I think he would have beaten Robert Whittaker? I don't know, right? We just saw what Robert was able to do. I don't know. But I do think he would not be knocked out this early. I think the double weight cut, he cut weight twice. I think a double weight cut in a week period affected that. Either way, Robert Whittaker, there are levels to this. Bobby Knuckles is on a completely different level. I was so happy. I had 0 bets on this fight because I thought Ikram was going to win because I thought Bobby was sort of fading a little bit. But ultimately, I love Bobby Knuckles so much, I'm not going to bet against the guy. And you guys know me well enough to know that I do that, right? I'll pick against people that I love sometimes just based off the matchup, but I'm not going to bet. I don't want to make money. I'm still a giant fan of this sport. At the end of the day, we have the channel, we have all these things, but I'm still a massive fan. I've seen every single UFC in the history of time since day one. I have some fighters that I love, I'm huge fans of, and I have been since the beginning. I'm not going to make money off of those fighters. I'll bet on them to win, and if I lose the money, then I'm sad for 2 reasons. But I'm not of the mindset, let me bet against him. And if he wins, then great. I'll lose money and he wins. And if he loses, well, who cares? I made money. I'm not going to do that. I wasn't going to do that here with Bobby Knuckles. Either way, great for him. This capped off what was a pretty uneventful card. This card kind of sucked. We're going on 2 cards in a row that weren't very good in execution. But UFC 303 is next week. And UFC 303 should be good. And before I tell you about premium membership, I'll tell you about the $50. Go to WeWantPicks.com/bets. Use our link. We have affiliate deals with the Sporty Buddies. You click the link. You sign up. You make a deposit of $50 or more. Somebody the other day was like, hey, I deposited $20. Can I get my 50? Well, no. It's not an infinite money glitch. You got to deposit 50 to get 50 or more, and then you'll get 50. But go to WeWantPicks.com/bets, use the link, sign up, make a deposit, and we will send you $50 as a thank you. You can then take that and become a premium member. I will be at UFC 303, and at UFC 303, we can talk about the fights, we can talk about premium membership, and I'll buy you a freaking beer. Jacob and I will be in Las Vegas next week. I will be landing on Thursday, and I will be there with a drink in my hand from Thursday to Sunday. And if you see me, come say hi and I'll buy you a drink and we can both have drinks in our hand. But you're going to have to be a premium member. No, say hi either way. But if you are a premium member, I would appreciate that. And premium membership is going to get you a whole bunch of shit. You're going to get all the picks, all the bets, the round line leans, the tools like the line movement tracker, the tools like the detailed data, metrics, and analytics, the tools like the DraftKings optimizer preloaded with ownership projections, the tools and the analysts. We have the artificial intelligence that's picking fights based solely off historical data, doing so at incredible accuracy. We got Artem breaking down not only UFC, but PFL, Bellator, KSW, all the regional shows. Everything I just mentioned is ready to go right now for UFC 303. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. It is only $10 for an entire month.